Greek wasn't a code. It was an accent to be heard. The Translation Tour, page 6 of 6, the Delivery Rule. Greek wasn't a code to be deciphered. It was an accent to be heard. On page 5, we faced the wall of letters. The oldest Greek stream did not arrive with a full set of English commas. It arrived with a pulse. Modern punctuation is scaffolding for the ear's breath, not a recovered artifact from the manuscript's pocket. This last stop is about the ear itself. Because if you only stare at the New Testament as a silent puzzle, blocks to look up, commas to weaponize, hidden roots to brandish, you will miss what the text was built to do in the first place. It was built to be heard. Greek wasn't a code to be deciphered. It was an accent to be heard. A world that read out loud. We live in a culture of silent screens. Eyes skim. Lips stay still. That posture feels normal. It is not how most people in antiquity met a text. Literacy rates were lower. Books were expensive and scarce. Communities gathered to hear letters read. Gospels proclaimed. Psalms sung. Arguments performed. In that world, reading often meant reading aloud. The page was closer to a score than to a private crossword. Luke gives you a snapshot in Acts 8. Philip hears the Ethiopian official reading Isaiah in his chariot. Philip does not need telepathy. He overhears the text because the man is reading it out loud, the ordinary way a person worked through a scroll. That detail is not a cute travel note. It is a window. If the scriptures were commonly voiced, then the writers who produced the New Testament were composing for mouths and ears, not only for silent armchairs centuries later. So when Greek molds a word for smoother pronunciation, when Paul stacks clauses until a reader runs out of breath, when John returns to the same drumbeat of simple words, you are not looking at decoration. You are looking at delivery. Accents on the page. You already know this from English. A letter from a friend sounds like them. A polished report sounds like a committee. A text message from your brother does not sound like a Supreme Court opinion, even when the vocabulary overlaps. The New Testament writers left acoustic thumbprints. Luke often feels composed and measured. A careful storyteller's cadence, the kind of prose that can stand up in public without tripping over itself. Polished does not mean cold. It means the sentences know where they are going. John often feels like a rhythmic drumbeat. Short tools, repeated words, light and dark, love and know, believe and remain. The simplicity is not poverty. It is a chant you can follow in a room. Paul often feels breathless, clauses cascading, arguments that refuse to sit still, sentences that sound like a man thinking at full speed with a congregation in earshot. English translators sometimes break him into smaller periods so modern readers can survive. The Greek heat is still there. A mind on fire, spoken. You do not need advanced Greek to respect the point. Different authors do not merely use different vocabulary. They sound different. Treat them like identical code machines, and you flatten living voices into one flat study voice, usually your own. Why the clay bends for the ear? This is where the whole tour locks together. On earlier pages we met buffer letters, shifting endings, prefixes that pinch a root, phrases that aim at targets, pauses modern printers supply. None of that is random. A language molded for hearers will sometimes choose the shape that sounds right in the mouth, even when the spelling then looks irregular to a silent dictionary hunter. That is why Greek can feel like clay instead of lumber. The potter is not only thinking about meaning on a shelf, the potter is thinking about speech in a room. So when someone waves an interlinear and says, "I have decoded the secret," ask a simpler question first. If this was meant to be heard, does your decoding still sound like the author's voice? Or like a spreadsheet? A song reduced to a list of notes is no longer a song. A letter reduced to a bag of Strong's numbers is no longer a letter. 3 ways to retrain the ear. 1. Read the passage out loud before you study it. Not as performance, as diagnosis. Your mouth will catch what your eyes skip. Repetition, heat, pause, punchline. If a famous gotcha reading makes the paragraph sound ridiculous when voiced, the gotcha is probably the problem. 2. Notice the author's accent, not only the topic. Ask, is this Luke's measured story, John's drumbeat, Paul's cascade, or someone else's register? Topic alone is not voice. 2 writers can discuss love and still not sound like twins. 3. Let translation be a performance bridge. A good English Bible is not a confession of failure. It is an attempt to carry an ancient oral event into a modern room. When helpers appear, when sentences are reshaped, when italics mark a scaffold, remember the goal, not to hide Greek, but to let English ears meet a meaning that first traveled on breath.